and welcome to another SciFirst MovieTalk episode. In this episode, I'll be discussing the 2004 horror thriller movie Saw, as directed by James Wan in his motion picture directorial debut, bringing us a film which helped redefine what we would come to expect from modern horror, whilst also spawning its own series of sequels and spin-off movies, and not to mention catapulting one into the limelight, who would then go on to bring us further juggernaut franchises such as the Insidious series and, of course, the phenomenally successful Conjuring series. So, this episode does kick off my Saw series that I'm going to do from 1 through 8, I think it is, if you like. What I would say is that if you haven't watched Saw specifically, then I wouldn't watch this review. Now, I'm going to try and keep it as spoiler-free as I can, but by insinuation, I may end up giving something away. And this film is definitely one you need to watch first, without knowing what's going to happen. So, if this applies to you, do switch off now. But please do come back to SciFirst MovieTalk and let me know what you thought of the film. I would be very interested to know. So, I will also offer another disclaimer, and that is the fact that I do love the Saw franchise. So, in this, I will try and be somewhat objective, but I'm probably going to be somewhat biased, to be quite fair. But anywho, in the movie, we find two characters, Adam Stanheight, as played by Leigh Whannell, who actually co-wrote the film with James Wan. I didn't know that until I looked it up. And Lawrence Gordon, as played by Cary Elwes. Yeah, I think so. Cary Elwes. But anyway, they've both been held captive and basically in what's a disused toilet block, I think. Disorientated, they find themselves the subject of a larger game designed to make them fight for their lives and prove that they want to live, having to solve a series of ingenious clues and puzzles along the way. We discover, following the investigations of Detective David Tapp, as played by Donald Glover, Stephen Singh, as played by Ken Leung, and Alison Cary, as played by Dina Meyer, I'm getting all the names wrong here, Dina Meyer, who are kind of following a series of grisly deaths, if you like. That this is all part of a master plan created by the notoriously disturbed Jigsaw Killer, who, we learn, devises a series of macabre tests involving a number of torturous devices in order to give people who he perceives have wasted their lives his own brand of release and the potential for that second chance. If, of course, they can escape his cleverly constructed and deliberately difficult traps, usually requiring the victim to inflict pain upon themselves in some very excruciating ways. So, can our two captive test subjects escape in time before the time runs out and they have to suffer the consequences for failure? So, I have seen this movie plenty of times before rewatching it for this review, but not actually for quite some time. And if I'm honest, it's easy to forget with all the sequels that kind of followed just how actually different this film was to those sequels. Okay, so it does have a very similar style and definitely the gore, but this kind of focuses more on investigating the crimes themselves and the victims, rather than concentrating on like an elaborate series of games and traps, which became so much the trademark of later films. Kind of being the first film in the series, it is raw and not kind of polished as some of the sequels. But this adds to its charm. Its cinematography is a little psychedelic at times, manic if you like, which can be a bit off-putting, and the acting at the start does seem a little hammy. I don't think any of the actors do a particularly excellent job in this film, even Donald Glover to be fair, but they are decent enough to keep you hooked. But it does kind of warm up as we get more engrossed in the story as it kind of unfolds. It is quite simply a fantastic work of original horror, or perhaps more of a thriller. Nothing quite like anything else I'd actually seen at the time. Okay, I would agree. 1995 Seven is obviously a source of inspiration, but they are not quite the same style. Of course, the ideas in Saw have now kind of been copied many times since its release. Some good, some bad. The film, of course, marks the very first time we hear Jigsaw's voice and witness the demonic-looking puppet, Billy. Both of which, are now simply infamously synonymous with the series and instantly recognisable. And not forgetting that this is the very first instalment we also have the joy of trying to figure out who the Jigsaw Killer really is, which is a lot of fun in itself, and the film cleverly twists and turns, only really letting you in on its secrets when it's ready, which is something that none of the other films kind of capture, if you like. Once we know who it is, we know who it is. They have to go down different avenues. At the beginning of the movie, we, as the viewer, have a little idea of what's going on, as the two captives do, well, upon first watching anyway. But I do love the way that the film takes that investigative approach to the story overall, and that kind of intricate way that it weaves its web. It's almost a kind of a character study in itself, exploring the victims in detail whilst kind of concentrating on investigating Jigsaw, which does become that primary focus rather than the games themselves, which are kind of intertwined, if you like, into the plot in order to exemplify the kind of mind Jigsaw has. As it progresses, the movie does get ever more tense, and this is further garnished with its soundtrack, as composed by Charlie Clouser, which, and he did actually do the music for all the other entries to follow, which does kind of increase in tension in line with the movie, with an edgy mechanical series of pieces providing an eerie and kind of industrial feel, accumulating in one of the most, in my opinion anyway, rousing and provocative and memorable compositions to ever grace the screen. Which is when the soundtrack kind of comes into its own and you can feel this building up throughout. I'm not sure, how else to kind of put this into words, but if you have watched the movie, then I'm sure you will know what I mean. The only real problem I have with the end theme is that it's too catchy. I always find myself humming it, which does get worse after I've watched one of the films, very much to the annoyance of everybody around me. It is, as I have said, primarily an investigative crime thriller style movie than an out-and-out gore fest, as of course some of the later movies in the series are. But don't get me wrong, it's gruesome enough. But if you were interested in watching a Saw movie but didn't know if you would quite have the stomach for it, this one might be the best place to start. Not only that the following films do kind of come back to some of the events in this movie, so for that reason alone, I would recommend anybody start their Saw journey here to get the full appreciation for the stories all told. But it's also probably one of the mildest, if you like, of the series overall. So overall, yes, this is a great movie and offers a very distinct taste of what is to come in the franchise kind of going forwards. It has an intricate plot that weaves a path along Jigsaw's overall plans for his victims that kind of keeps you hooked from the beginning to that very last second, with a deliciously splendid and twisted ending that I honestly never saw coming in a million years. And it still gets me excited to witness that again. There's not many films that can actually do that. Once you've seen it, you've seen it. But this, even after multiple viewings, it is just simply that good. I think it's a real testament to the film and its overall story that I am still excited to see this film and its conclusion, and remain interested enough, even though I know what is about to happen. So whilst the movie is fantastic on your initial viewing, I don't think it's actually diminished on subsequent viewings thereafter. Simply, your perspective's changed. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We've absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst Movie Talk, and we would definitely love to have you back. But most of all, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.